Vivek, if we do the giveaway that you want to give to Putin to give him his land, it's not going to be too long before he rolls across a NATO border. And frankly, our men and women of our armed forces are going to have to go and fight him. I want to let the Ukrainians fight and drive Putin and the Russians back out into Russia.
I want to just briefly address Pence. Vice President Pence, I have a newsflash. The USSR does not exist anymore. It fell back in 1990. President Trump, I believe, was the best president of the 21st century. It's a fact. And Chris Christie, honest to God, your claim that Donald Trump is motivated by vengeance and grievance would be a lot more credible if your entire campaign were not based on vengeance and grievance against one man. And if people at home want to see a bunch of people blindly bashing Donald Trump without an iota of vision for this country, they could just change the channel to MSNBC right now. We're skating on thin ice, and we cannot set a precedent where the party in power uses police force to indict its political opponents. It is wrong.
If you would. If you would. Is there anyone on stage who would not support the increase of more funding to Ukraine? Not to, Governor DeSantis?
I will have Europe pull their weight. Right now, they're not doing that.
You would not support
and I think we need to do, and I think our support should be contingent on them doing it. And I would have support in China to be able to take China and do what we need to do with China.
Mr. Ramaswamy, you would not support an increase of funding to Ukraine?
I would not. And I think that this is disastrous, that we are protecting against an invasion across somebody else's border when we should use those same military resources to prevent across the invasion of our own southern border here in the United States of America. We are driving Russia further into China's hands. The Russia-China alliance is the single greatest threat we face. And I find it offensive that we have professional politicians on the stage that will make a pilgrimage to Kyiv, to their Pope, Zelensky, without doing the same thing for people in Maui or the south side of Chicago or Kensington.
This is a lightning round, Mr. Ramaswamy. I think you were mentioned there. You're 38. You're the youngest on the stage. You've said, and you just said, you want a civics test or public service for those under 25 to be able to vote. So the question is, do you want a mental acuity test for presidents over 75?
I believe in the people of this country to tell the difference between somebody who's an automaton and somebody who's actually a thinking agent in the White House, which we don't have in there today. And I will tell you, I want to address Vice President Pence's comment. I think we do need somebody of a different generation to lead this nation forward. Look at the way I've run this campaign. Going to the south side of Chicago, to Kensington, in the middle of Philadelphia, where traditional Republican candidates don't go. We have an opportunity to build a multi-ethnic, working-class majority to deliver a landslide, and I think I'm the only candidate in this race, young or old, black or white, to bring all of those voters along to deliver a Reagan 1980 revolution. We're going to do it in 2024.
Same question to you, Governor.
Because for a long time, we have professional politicians in the Republican Party who have been running from something. Now is our moment to start running to something. Drill, frack, burn coal, embrace nuclear. Put people back to work. The only war that I will declare as U.S. president will be the war on the federal administrative state that is the source of those toxic regulations acting like a wet blanket on the economy. Listen, now that everybody's gotten their memorized, pre-prepared slogans out of the way, we can actually have a real discussion now. The reality and the fact of the matter is...
Was that one of yours?
Not really, Mike, actually. We're just going to have some fun tonight. Do you want a super PAC puppet, or do you want a patriot who speaks the truth? Do you want incremental reform, which is what you're hearing about, or do you want revolution? Let us be honest as Republicans. I'm the only person on the stage who isn't bought and paid for, so I can say this. The climate change agenda is a hoax. The climate change agenda is a hoax, and we have to declare independence for it. And the reality is, the anti-carbon agenda is the wet blanket on our economy. Yes, we will stand for the rule of law. Yes, we will close the southern border where criminals are coming in every day. And yes, we will back law enforcement because we remember who we really are. And that's also how we address that mental health epidemic in the next generation that is directly leading to violent crime across this country.
Governor DeSantis, really quick.
We live in a dark moment, and we have to confront the fact that we're in an internal, sort of cold cultural civil war. The same people who took us into the Iraq war, the same people who took us into the Vietnam war. You cannot end it. You cannot start another no-win war. And I do not want to get to the point where we're sending our military resources abroad when we could be better using them here at home to protect our own borders, protect the homeland. We have a crisis of achievement. Let's shut down the head of the snake, the Department of Education. Take that $80 billion, put it in the hands of parents across this country. This is the civil rights issue of our time. Allow any parent to choose where they send their kids to school. End the teachers' unions at the local level to allow public schools to compete. And then revive our national identity where every high school senior should have to pass the same civics test that, frankly, every immigrant, including my mother, had to pass in order to become a citizen of this country. And the fact of the matter is, look, there's a part of education policy that also rests with the family. I didn't grow up in money, but you know the word privilege gets used a lot? Well, you know what? I did have the ultimate privilege of two parents in the house with a focus on educational achievement. And I want every kid to enjoy that. So part of the problem is we also have a federal government that pays single women more not to have a man in the house than to have a man in the house, contributing to an epidemic of fatherlessness. And I think that goes hand in glove with the education crisis as well, because we have to remember education starts with the family, and the nuclear family is the greatest form of governance known to mankind. We have a crisis. The reality is you have a bunch of people, professional politicians, super PAC puppets, following slogans handed over to them by their 400-page super PACs last week. The real choice we face in this primary is this. Do you want a super PAC puppet, or do you want a patriot who speaks the truth? Do you want incremental reform, which is what you're hearing about, or do you want revolution?
Okay.
And I stand on the side of the American revolution. And
why should voters choose you over more experienced politicians on this stage? You're basically, a blank slate for people. You're 38 years old. You've said that you only voted in 2 presidential elections before this moment, this political race.
So first, let me just address a question that is on everybody's mind at home tonight. Who the heck is this skinny guy with a funny last name, and what the heck is he doing in the middle of this debate stage? I'll tell you, I'm not a politician, Brett. You're right about that. I'm an entrepreneur. My parents came to this country with no money 40 years ago. I have gone on to found multi-billion-dollar companies. I did it while marrying my wife, Apurva, raising our 2 sons, following our faith in God. That is the American dream. And I am genuinely worried that that American dream will not exist for our 2 sons and their generation unless we do something about it. And I do think Brett is going to take an outsider, because for a long time we have professional politicians in the Republican Party who have been running from something. Now is our moment to start running to something, to our vision of what it means to be an American today. If you have a broken car, you don't turn over the keys to the people who broke it again. You hand it over to a new generation to actually fix the problem. That's why I'm in this race, and we're just getting warmed up.
One of the reasons is you're very media savvy. You have a warm and enticing personality. You smile. Politicians don't smile enough. They need to smile more.
I'm not a politician, and honestly, it was fun.
Okay, I hate to tell you, you're now officially a politician.
6 months into being a politician.
Yeah, you're in.
6 months
once
after
you're in
tonight. Okay, officially, I'm going to have to cringe, but wear that label.
Right.
But I do think, Sean, it's going to take an outsider. I do not think, whether it's ending the war in Ukraine, whether it's reviving this economy, and the war that I really do want to fight is the war on the administrative state and the shadow government here at home. That is not going to happen from somebody who comes from the super PAC class. It's not going to come from somebody who comes from the historical Republican Party. It is going to take an outsider. And the other thing, Sean, that I think is really important in this election is that we're skating on thin ice. This has to be a moral mandate. This cannot be another 50.1 election. And I'm in this race to build a multi-ethnic, working-class majority like Reagan did. This has to be a landslide. Young, old, black, white, Hispanic, man, woman, doesn't matter. I'm running this campaign that way. We're going to the south side of Chicago, to Kensington, and the inner city of Philadelphia, where Republican candidates are taught not to go in a primary. Oh. But the reality is that's why I don't mention Republicans and Democrats on the stage. And I'm a little different than the other candidates here, because everybody else was focused on Joe Biden. And I think Joe Biden's a disastrous president. But I think the way we win in a landslide is we have to offer an independent vision of our own. And the more we do that, the more likely we are to win.
Mr. Ramaswamy.
I was born in 1985, and I grew up into a generation where we were taught to celebrate our diversity and our differences so much that we forgot all of the ways we are really just the same as Americans, bound by a common set of ideals that set this nation into motion in 1776. And this is our moment to revive those common ideals. God is real. There are two genders. Fossil fuels are a requirement for human prosperity. Reverse racism is racism. An open border is not a border. Parents determine the education of their children. The nuclear family is the greatest form of governance known to man. Capitalism lifts us up from poverty. There are 3 branches of government, not 4. And the U.S. Constitution, it is the strongest guarantor of freedom in human history. That is what won us the American Revolution. That is what will win us the revolution of 2024. Thanks for letting me introduce myself tonight. Thank you. God is real. There are two genders. Fossil fuels are a requirement for human prosperity. Reverse racism is racism. An open border is not a border. Parents determine the education of their children. The nuclear family is the greatest form of governance known to man. Capitalism lifts us up from poverty. There are 3 branches of government, not 4. And the U.S. Constitution, it is the strongest guarantor of freedom in human history. That is what won us the American Revolution. That is what will win us the revolution of 2024. Thanks for letting me introduce myself tonight. Thank you.